Hey guys, welcome to the Guest Life Podcast, episode 16. We're fortunate enough to have Dianna Moulden in the studio today. She's a healthcare, sports, fitness professional. She specializes in physiotherapy. Dianna is the director of physiotherapist at Foot Knee Back Clinic and also the co-owner of Ancaster 30-Minute Hit. So we're so happy to have her on board today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I brought Dianna in. Not only does she kind of help me personally, kind of mold my body back together after all the injuries that I go through, but Dianna's one of those people that just always forward thinking, moving forward, talk about creating a healthy atmosphere, not only in the workplace, but, externally. She's done so many things over the years in terms of different types of positions within her career. So we're happy to have her on board and kind of hear how she got to the place she is today.
Awesome. Thanks.
So I'll let her introduce herself. But that being said, if you're in the sports world, you've probably heard her name before because she's maybe, taped your ankles or fixed a rotator cuff.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about how you got here today.
Okay. Well, I did all my schooling at McMaster. So I did my undergrad degree in kin and then my physio degree at Mac. And then I started working at the Mac Sports Clinic. And that's where I was introduced to sports teams and athletes and chaos. And I fell in love with it, whether it's, I don't know if it was the long days or the fast pace, but I loved it. And so I worked there for about 5.5 years. And then I kind of made the difficult decision to try to have a little bit more work-life balance. And so I moved into private practice in Ancaster, but kept the sports side up so that it allowed me to kind of pick and choose what sports I wanted to do. So I started working with the Canadian bobsled team, and I started working with, there was a basketball team in there, a professional soccer team. So it gave me the ability to pick and choose sports and small pockets of sports still, but I had kind of a slower paced private practice clinic. But then of course, I just fill the gaps of, more time with more opportunities to work. So I would say, even though I've left, the everyday sports world, I am probably still as busy as I was when I worked at Mac. I just fill it with other work-related events. And so I've been a physio for 10 years now. Still do sports, but also do kind of community and like the average person can come see me, not just athletes. And that's where I am today.
And she was telling me before she got in here where she was running around to because she's got a flight to catch next week, right?
Yep. I'm leaving on Friday to Latvia with the Canadian bobsled team. So we're going to do 2 races in Latvia and one race in Germany. So I'll be gone about 3 weeks and then I'll come home. But I had an expired passport and not the first time this has happened. So I was running around to get my passport today.
And how do you get involved? When we met, I was going through a football injury at the time, and actually your brother worked for us here.
Yep.
And he was like, you got to go see my sister. I was telling him about my rotator cuff, and I had 3 different people look at it, and I've been probably mending it for about 6 months, and I think 2 sessions with you, and I got it back to bench press and shoulder press. So, tell us a little bit about how that all works. How do you get involved with the bobsled team? And then what do you do on a daily basis for them if you're going to be traveling?
Yeah, so I credit a lot of how I treat now to my time at McMaster. So when I was in the sports clinic there, it was one of those wild physio clinics where you see 4 people an hour, you've got someone over on the bike, I've got someone on the table, I've got needles and someone over there. But in doing that for, 6 days a week and, 10-hour days, you end up seeing a ton of people and you end up seeing a ton of different injuries. And I would say, unfortunately for my patients of, 10 or 8 or 9 years ago, I made a lot of mistakes. And so I learned how, what works in treatment, picking things up kind of quickly because you saw so much back then, but you also treated a lot of people. And I like to make connections with all my patients. So in bobsleigh, it was actually Jesse Lumsden that connected me with them. So
Oh, no way.
yeah, so he was a longtime friend and then patient of mine. And when he transitioned from football to bobsleigh, they were looking for a few other therapists to add to their kind of therapist team, because the way they do it to make it manageable so that you can still have a work life, you do kind of pockets of races. So you might be with them for 2 weeks, or you might be with the team for 4 weeks, but it's usually never longer than that. So then if you have a clinic, you can tell your patients, I'm gone for 4 weeks, but I'm coming back. And so when they were looking to add another therapist, Jesse recommended me. And I'm the only therapist that's not West Coast based, because the team is out of Calgary. But they kind of called me, and I guess I must have told some good jokes. I hit it off with the coordinators of the team. They gave me a trial in Lake Placid, and I spent 2 weeks with the team. And then I guess everyone gave me, the thumbs up, and I've been with them ever since 2018. So I was in Europe with them in February, right before everything locked down. And then, taking off to Latvia in a pandemic on Friday. So it's good. I mean, admittedly frustrating for some of my patients when I'm in and out. The one thing I've learned, and I think, we've talked about this before, is coming up with strategies to manage, common problems. And a common problem is I'm away sometimes. So I've started telling patients, like, from first point of contact that, I do take opportunities with professional teams and that will pull me out of the clinic, but I've built a team. So there's other people you can see besides just me. And, I will usually always come back.
Well, that's great. And I think, setting the communication standards and making sure that you're, talking to your patients. I know myself, I only come to you when I'm hurt.
Yes.
But I know a lot of other people need more maintenance practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think communication, that's what I base a lot of my practice on. I like to explain things, like even with, way back when we first started working on your shoulder years ago, I like to explain what's going on, what I'm doing. Not that you really care what I'm doing hands-on, but I like to tell you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And then, if I give you exercises, I tell you what they're for and why you should do it. Because the more you know, the more you're invested in your care. It's one thing if I just, we don't really talk and I just, manipulate your shoulder and then tell you to do an exercise, don't tell you why. And then you're like, well, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. And so I try to kind of communicate as much as I can to people to try and get them invested in their care.
And well, and it's great too, right? Because then you understand, what not to do when things happen again.
Yeah, exactly. And to recognize the problem early, like you did this time.
Yeah, exactly. Come right in. Being a female, in a lot of times you're working for male teams, obviously, McMaster football and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about how you navigate kind of, being part of the locker room, because, football guys are wild and crazy. And I'm sure being on the sidelines is not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But kind of managing expectations and also just taking things, in grasp and going with it.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing, and you can apply this to any business. And, if you're I tell all my newer therapists to kind of think this way too. There's the saying I say to people, it's not weird unless you make it weird. And so I've always just kind of, waltzed into a locker room if I'm meant to be in there, and just waltzing.
Not just any locker room.
Not just anyone.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be in there, but I just kind of will confidently go where I need to go, and join conversations if they're directed to me. Shut down conversations, or one-liners that shouldn't happen. But I think I try to just kind of integrate myself and act like a member of the team. But I have had, I won't tell you the sport, but I have had a professional organization there's one professional league that admittedly has very few females. And they did tell me that they would prefer if I would train their therapist, who was a male, to treat like I do, because they would prefer he was in the locker room and not myself in the locker room.
Really?
But other than that, it's the only sports team or league that hasn't kind of made an issue of it. I think admittedly the guys, when they haven't had a female therapist, they like to push the buttons, see what they can get away with. But I don't, I don't shut things down in an awkward way, but they know, what they can say, what they can't say. I can roll with the punches too.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of being confident and making it known that it's normal for you to be there. It's not, something, it's not unusual. So if you act normally, typically they will act normally too. But it's interesting. I'd never really thought about it before, MAC football, like my teams at McMaster, I helped out with football. That's where I got a lot of my sports skills, men's basketball, men's soccer. And, so I've always done it from like the beginning of my career. But when I was interviewing recently, I told you I interviewed with the Washington Wizards. And at the end of the interview, the guy said to me, he's like, regardless of where we end up together and, if we ever talk again, he said, I just want to commend you on, your resume. And he's like, you have a lot of professional sports experience. And he's like, male athletes, it's tough to create a relationship with them and create, confidence of them in you. And he's like, so, male professional athletes are tough. And he's like, and then it's even tougher with you being a female. And he said, so I just want to commend you. He's like, your professional male sports experience really shows how you can create, a rapport and a relationship and confidence between yourself and athletes. And he's like, that's rare to see. And it's rare to see as a female. So he's like, you should be really proud of that. And then I hung up. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then they never called me again. But yeah, so I think it's more just having the confidence, whether it's, a little bit of a show or you are really that confident, but just kind of projecting that confidence that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And, I have never had an issue like gender wise that has caused me, to leave a sport or have to take it to higher up or anything like that.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, it's great to see, especially in the, from an outsider's perspective of, the next generation of female physiotherapists that want to get involved. Like, don't be scared of, getting outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, you don't have to work with the female teams. You can work with the male teams.
For sure. And then, so how'd you make the transition out of, say, McMaster onto, because I'm sure that was like kind of a broad spectrum when you were there, out to now you're up at Foot Knee Back Clinic, and then you made another jump into 30-minute hit spot.
Yeah, it's funny because I think I just have learned now, it's taken me a long time, but I think I've learned, I really like to work. And I think, we were talking the last time we were together, putting these systems in place to give you more freedom. And I'm like, I think I would just fill that freedom with more work. But when I was at McMaster, it was a lot. There were 400 varsity athletes. So my last year there, I was in charge of just varsity athletics. So there were 400 varsity athletes at McMaster, and there were 2 therapists. So essentially, it was like it was 200 athletes I was overseeing. And so that gets to be a lot. And, it's weekends and late nights and early mornings, which I'm not afraid of. But when I looked at it, I'm like, this might be forever. This might be my schedule. So I made the decision, to go to Foot Knee Back and switch into private practice, thinking I'll have these like definable, like 8 to 2 and like 1 to 7 hours. And then, my whole day ends up being working. But that was what sparked the change to kind of go to community practice. So then, when the gym opportunity came along, was it something that was, in my 10-year vision? Absolutely not. But I'm like, okay, I like a challenge. It's something different. I can make this work. And so I kind of took that on. So I think a lot of the experiences that have been presented to me, it's me saying, sure, like I've never done that. Like bobsleigh, I've never even seen it. Sure, I'd love to work with those athletes and see what it's like. And, with any team I work with, it's like, yeah, sure, I'll figure that out. So, with the gym, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll give that a try. And so I think it's just about, jumping in with 2 feet. And then, you find out down the road, it works, it doesn't work, you have to make changes. But what sparked me to leave McMaster was to try and strive for a little bit more work-life balance. And it's, still swinging heavily in the work department, but work in progress.
Well, we talked about, last time I was getting treated was, kind of when you're starting a family and when it's going to make that switch. And,
Yep.
I think I said it pretty clearly. I said work-life balance is not a thing.
Yeah. Not at all. Yeah.
Especially if you want to excel in something. So if you want to be a mother or you want to be a father, it's going to take over more of your time. Mm-hmm. Just going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? You have to put
Nature
time
of the
in.
beast. Yeah.
But that being said, like taking on some new challenges and navigating kind of how to be more effective and efficient with your time can always, be utilized in the best ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with your busy schedule, that being said, how do you prioritize with personal life?
It's tough. And it's almost like, you need to think about it every day. You need to force yourself to do things for yourself every day, because it's so easy to be like, okay, I'm going to work out this morning. And then, it's like, or I could get through my email inbox before I start treating people and everyone else, wants a piece of me. So it's hard to, truly prioritize yourself. You almost have to kind of drive it home every day. It's not something, at least for me, that kind of becomes routine. I still have to force myself. It's like, your workouts in the morning. It's like you have to meet someone, because if you rely on just yourself, it's not going to happen. But I think, keeping like movement. So, working out and just moving in some way every day. I have to kind of prioritize that. Also, because I tell people to do that all day long. So it'd be terrible if I wasn't doing it myself.
Yeah.
A new one that I've tried to add in regularly too is meditation, and just trying to kind of, when I transition out of the clinic for the day, trying to kind of like throw a meditation in there so that I can try and switch my brain into, okay, like clinic time is done, meditate. Okay, now it's, this time, or, either workout time or email time, but just changing that up. So I try to prioritize that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I try to kind of not put it in the middle of my day, because I don't want to meditate and then go back to treating people. So I try to kind of put it at, I either meditate and go into the clinic, or the clinic ends, meditate, and then move on with it. So trying to kind of have it be a separator of the day. So I try to do that. And then I also, I consider this self-care, but I really try to prioritize like friends and like connecting with other people, especially in a pandemic now. Like it's hard. I spend my whole day in a mask treating people. Like some of my patients, I met them in the pandemic. So one guy today like adjusted his mask, and I'm like, I didn't even know you had a mustache. Like he has a total old man like mustache, but I've never seen anything from the eyes down. So, I try to prioritize like, whether it's meeting friends for a workout, meeting friends for a hike, just trying to kind of connect with my friends as well. Because, when you're building a business, it's so easy to have like your friends and your family be the first to go in a way, because you assume like they'll always be there. So, once I build this empire, I'll call them again. So I think, I try to prioritize friends, try to prioritize movement, and then meditation's my new one.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely hard, especially at the beginning. I think everyone's pretty understanding.
Yeah.
And supportive, but that wears off.
Yeah.
That wears off until you become the business owner that's absent.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty easy to get that characteristic kind of misconstrued, because really, it's just like it's everybody thinks it's an overnight success.
Yeah.
Right? How long have you been doing physio for?
10 years.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is there's often not, when you own your own business or you're trying to build a business, there isn't definable hours, like you don't want to turn around the customer that's calling that, needs your services. Just like I don't necessarily want to turn down the person who's injured that needs my services. So if my day ends at 4, but I don't have room for this person, well, now my day ends at 5. And so it's easy to kind of bump things. And then all of a sudden, you're supposed to meet a girlfriend to, go meet up for a hike. And it's like, I can't make it anymore because I'm going to squeeze patients in. I'm saying this because I did this yesterday. And, I'm going to squeeze a few patients in. And then, so you'd have to try and kind of prioritize that. And I think also trying to create as best you can, like, definable hours in your day, so that there is, not a hard stop, but like a soft stop time.
It's amazing. Like, I mean, it's a constant struggle, but it's also, being self-aware that it's happening.
Yeah.
And communicating that, hey, I'm really sorry it's been like this lately. I've just, been overwhelmed with work, and I'm making this a priority over hanging out and going for a hike.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm going to change that in the future.
In the future.
Yeah.
Maybe when I retire.
It's amazing. So tell me a little bit about the 30-minute hit. I mean,
yeah,
it's a huge part of the community, especially the female community up in Ancaster.
Yeah.
So a little bit of give back and, a business opportunity. It was all in one.
Yeah. So it kind of fell into my lap. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily the long-term plan, but I try to encourage people to move all day long. And so many of the patients I see, the struggle, and it's funny that it is a struggle because it's so common sense to me, but it's not for every person that, pain can be dealt with exercise. And so many people think, well, I'm going to start exercise once I'm out of pain. And it's like, no, actually, if we can find things you can do, even though you have pain, that's what's going to help in the long term manage your injury or manage your chronic pain. So I just saw it as an opportunity to try and kind of keep the community active in like a fun and an interesting way, and keep it women's only so that they have a space that they feel comfortable working out. But then the other piece to it too, there's a little bit of a self-defense piece to it too. It's kind of fun teaching people to if they, heaven forbid they had to, but defend themselves. So, but I got into it mainly to think about, okay, this is a way to kind of encourage people that have never been active to give something a try, to people that are active, give them something different to try, but just trying to get the community moving as a whole.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit of how, what do you guys specialize in? How does it work?
So it's kind of a circuit style workout. So every station is 2 minutes, and within that station, you're doing kind of a high intensity interval type circuit exercise. So there's different bells that go off during the workout to signify kind of going as fast as you can at whatever you're doing.
I heard that a little bit when I was.
Yeah, I hear them all the time. And so to kind of encourage that increase in heart rate, and then the heart rate drops back down, you work on your technique. 2 minutes, and then you move on to the next station, and then there's 13 stations in total. So in the end, it's just under 30 minutes. Your heart rate is going to be varied throughout the whole workout, which is going to help kind of with that fat burning style. But then also, like I said, working on self-defense techniques, kickboxing, boxing. So it's fun. It's fun. It's different. It's I felt like there wasn't anything like it around here, which is part of the reason why I got involved. And it's been good.
That's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about technology, only because last time I was treated, I got absolutely ravaged by this gun technique. But that being said, my shoulder feels a lot better.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk about kind of, being an entrepreneur, you always have to be adapting and, open to these new ideas and new techniques.
Yeah.
So with physiotherapy, I'm sure, just like diets, where there's keto, vegetarian, vegan, all these different things.
Yeah.
With physio, whether it's chiropractic, massage therapy, or just, I call yours active physio.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a term for it.
Yeah.
But with the new technology, how do you adapt, and do you need to always adapt, and do you do continued training?
Yes. So I think one of the biggest things is there's always courses out there, as there is with any profession. So any kind of new physios that I'm mentoring or working with, first question they always ask me is, what courses should I take as soon as I graduate? And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, let's see, where you're going to be working and what you enjoy seeing and what you don't enjoy seeing. And then, what courses are out there that can fill that knowledge gap. So, I've said it to anyone that comes in contact with me, like, I'm a course junkie. I'll take any course out there. It's terrible for like the financial side of things, but I will always take courses, and then I'll take it and then be like, okay, that was good, or that was bogus, or, I'll use a little bit of that, but not all of that. So I think it's definitely important for physios, chiros, any healthcare practitioners to be taking courses to see what's out there, because in the social media world now, everyone's an expert, right? You can get a physio that has 400,000 followers, and he's just, spewing complete garbage. But you look and you're like, 400,000 followers. I mean, it's probably right what he's saying. And it's not, but he just has a large base. And same with courses. I mean, anybody can make a course and they can teach you whatever they want and design a certificate in Canva and print it out and, it's official. But they might not actually be the expert in what they're doing. So you have to evaluate everything that comes by. And so that being said, the guns. So I used the Theragun on you, and that's, there's a big trend in the guns now. And it looks fancy if you have one.
It was intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was intense. And
Totally.
I asked her if it could be lowered because I thought my shoulder was going to fall
level
off.
one.
But I was on the easiest setting.
Yeah. But so with things like that, with something like that, like I look into the evidence of that. And you know what? The evidence actually supports the use of, they call it vibrational therapy. And there is evidence to show that the muscles get so confused at the rate at which they're vibrating that they just kind of calm down and relax. So I have a tool, especially, if I'm working on a massive quad. So, bobsledders are bigger individuals. And so if I've got a big quad in front of me, trying to mimic what the gun can do, like with my thumbs, would be exhausting. So you use something like that. Whereas, there's always trends. There's a trend in physio now, or I guess I saw it more so a couple of years ago, where it was hands off. So, manual therapy. So like what I do with you with the shoulder and working into your neck, that doesn't do anything. So hands off, exercise only for physio. And so I know a lot of physios that treat that way. Like they treat with exercises and they don't really use their hands. And I think it's managing expectations. Like if you've been to physio before, you've seen me for your shoulder before, I worked with my hands, shoulder got better. So if you all of a sudden came in and I was like,
the injury,
Dan, we're not gonna, you're not gonna lay on the table anymore. We're gonna do exercises, and then I might use the gun. I might throw some tape on you, and off you go. I'm not really managing your expectations of, well, the last time my shoulder hurt and it got better, you worked on it. And so that's what I think I want to see. So there's always trends. I think a good physio will look at all the trends, or a good chiro or whatever, will look at all the trends and evaluate them and maybe use them a little bit or not use them at all. Or, so you kind of make your own toolbox. You don't kind of jump in 2 feet any one way or the other.
And how have you found that? I mean, I think, anybody listening, being an entrepreneur in a space, like we're not recreating, we're not reinventing the wheel. I always say we're just pumping up the tires, but creating your own identity within your brand and your organization and your specialty, I think is so important. So with physio, I'm sure, yours is very unique. I've been to multiple physios throughout my life for different things. And like, how do you find, obviously you're confident in what you do because your results are shown.
Yeah. Thanks.
What's one of the, craziest things you've done with somebody or helped them overcome, whether it was sports or just regular health? Like, is there a story that kind of sticks out to you? Yeah.
And it's a recent one. I bet if I thought I could come up with a few more. But recently, so in February when I was in Switzerland with the bobsled team, it was the 4-man race day, and they'd done the first heat. The guys had done the first heat, and then the pilot, so he's our gold medalist, Justin Cripps, he pulled his groin in between, like after the first heat, and there's still a second heat, and we were sitting, I think, second at that point, and he'd never done well on this track. Like I think previously he had placed 15th, and now he's sitting second. So he is thinking like, I'm racing, part of you thinks, okay, like don't even bother doing the second heat. Like there's no point. You pulled your groin. We've got other races coming up. And he was like, no, I'm going to race. And I'm like, okay, so I have about 30 minutes to figure out like how is he going to push the sled, sprint, get in the sled and not blow his groin out. And so for me, I know there's nothing my hands are going to do unless, say, a shoulder is dislocated and I put it back in. Okay, that solves a problem with my hands in like 5 minutes, but I'm not going to unpull his groin with my hands. but I'm going to let him think I am. So, he lays down on the table. I'm, literally just rubbing his leg. And I'm like, oh, I can feel it loosening. Oh, this is going to be good. Yep. You're going to be fine. And then I'm like, okay, we need to tape it. I need to know that I need to tape it in a way where he's not going to blow his groin. So there's a tape job called a hip Spica, but I hadn't even opened the kit that I'd been traveling with for 3 weeks. I had no idea what was in there. I opened it up because I usually just travel with my own stuff. So I'm like, please let there be a tensor in here. So I open it up. There's like 2 different sized tensors. I'm like, okay, this will work. Tape up the hip so that he can't extend his leg past where I want him to. And then, taped it up. I'm like, okay, this is going to be fine. You have 5 seconds. You can sprint for 5 seconds. And it's all about instilling the confidence. I at no point was like, I don't know. Are you sure you want to do this? Like there's championships coming up. Do you really want to do this? I was like, nope, this is going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You can't hurt it. Totally could. You can't hurt it. We've taped it. It's totally protected. We worked on it. Like, let's go. And so they pushed. I had scissors down my snow pants in case the tape job that I did to his hip was too tight and he got to the start line and was like, cut this off. So I had tape down my snow pants and they take off and go. And I'm watching at like he sprints the whole way. All 4 guys get in the sled. They finish in first with 1 team left to go. And it was the team that was in first place because they go backwards like 10-1 in the second heat. And then I'm watching and you just see like the team in front start to slow down. We ended up in first. He won gold. He'd never done that before. Like runs into the clubhouse, like picks me up. Like, and I was just like, you just feel like you're part of the team.
Oh my gosh.
Even though I had to exert no energy. But it's those things where you're like, okay, I have, 20 minutes. I have to make him feel confident that he's not going to hurt himself. I have to do something to protect it. So I'm confident, there's at least less of a chance that he's going to hurt himself. And I have to look around to see what I even have with me. We're in a bar in Switzerland, the track, it's like, there's such like history there. So the track you actually are treating in this old like men's club called the Dracula Club. And it's just, there's Draculas everywhere and vampires. And so you're looking around like, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to rig this up? And then to see like that success, you're like, okay, I feel part of the team. So yeah, that was a recent one where I felt like I, impacted the outcome of a race, which was nice.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting like, I had this lady in a walker and now she's back. So yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, there's a few of those, you always have the stories like, someone couldn't walk before they were waiting for a knee replacement, get the knee replacement, and then they, walk their daughter down the aisle. Like there's those good ones too, but like the ones that like really get my heart rate going are usually sport related.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
So, we always have our listeners come in and one of the things we say is, why not me? Why not now? Right. Mm-hmm. The question is, always taking chances and taking risks and being entrepreneurs, especially, young at age and filled with lots of energy and what we're going to do. So what would you tell your old self or someone coming up about someone that's like maybe thinking, do I do it? Do I not do it? What advice would you give them?
I think you just have to take the chances that you think you can't take. And, so any sports opportunity, it's usually someone reaching out to me. I've never really had to apply for a sports job with a sports team. It's usually just people reaching out. And then it's a sport that maybe I'm not comfortable with or I have no experience in, but I always say yes. And from there, it leads to other experiences. So I think the biggest thing is, I never think, working with the bobsled team on the first day, I'm like, oh gosh, they're going to eat me alive. Like, applying to, the Washington Wizards, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to hear from them. But I just do it because I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I never hear from them or, the team doesn't like me and I get that great opportunity and I never work with them again. No problem. So I think it's, taking the chances you think you don't deserve and just learning as much as you can from them.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I know the listeners are so excited to hear it. And,
thanks for having me.
Get that input. So thanks for being on the show. And to all the listeners out there, again, you want to ask yourselves the question, why not me? Why not now? So if you want to chuck something out and you're female and you want to try 30-minute hit in Ancaster, we'll have all our links in the bio. And then the next time you bang up a shoulder or a knee,
yeah,
you know where to find Dianna.
Perfect.
And see you around.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.